All right, so far we talked about two predefined functions, print and type. In this video, we're going to talk about format function, and we are going to combine it with print as well. But the main focus is going to be on this function that is called format. There are different ways that you can use format function. I'm going to talk about one specific ways of using format function, but again, there are other ways to use it, and later on in other videos, I'm going to show you different methods. But for now, just keep it same for different types. I'm going to use that one way of using it. Okay, so let's get to this two numbers that we have, and let's say, okay, we want to do some arithmetic operations on them. So let's say I have this variable num, and the variable num is the result of num1 plus num2. So I have the addition of those two numbers, and I'm going to assign the addition into this variable num, right? So basically what it does, like what we do in real world, you're going to take value 5, add 2.5 to it, the result is 7.5, and that value is going to be assigned to that variable num. If I run this code, it's going to go through, no problems, but you're not going to see any results. Why is that? Why I'm not seeing anything? Again, that goes back into not printing it. If you don't ask Python to display the result, it's not going to show it to you. The result is there, the result is calculated, put into num, but you're not seeing it because you never ask it to be printed. So if you want to see the result, the final result of that addition, you need to say, okay, I want you to print it for me. I want you to display it to me. And then Python does that to you, for you, okay? So I have that addition, and you can always have other stuff with it. So let's say I copy these two lines, and instead of addition, I'm going to do subtraction. And again, you're going to say, okay, num1 minus num2 is going to calculate the result, put it into this variable num, and then you're printing num. As you see, I'm using the same variable over and over, and that's okay. If you don't need to keep track of num, you can use just one bucket and do all of your calculation, put it inside that bucket, and reuse that bucket for different things. But if you need to keep track of that value, let's say you want to use the result of addition later on in your code, then make sure you have a unique identifier for it. In this case, I don't need that variable, or I don't need that identifier later on in my code. So I just reuse that bucket as I go to have less variables to keep track of. So in this case, I'm adding the two variables, I'm putting it inside the variable num, and I'm printing it. I'm done with that variable, so I'm going to reuse it. I'm going to use it for subtraction. I'm subtracting num2 from num1, putting it inside num variable, that bucket that I had, and I print it. So if I have another one, let's say I want to do multiply, I do the exact same thing, multiply them, put it inside the same bucket, print it, I'm done with that bucket. Now I'm going to do it for division. Do the division, put it inside that bucket, and then print it. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this piece of code that we have and see what we get. So the addition of the two is 7.5, the subtraction is 2.5, the multiply is 12.5, and then division is 2.0. As you see, all of them have the floating part to it. The reason is, as when we talked about arithmetic operations, is if at least one operand is type float, the result is going to be type float. If I change it to anything else, to an integer type, the result of all of those arithmetic operators except the division is going to be an integer type, because both operands that we have are type integer. The result is going to be type integer with the exception of the division. Division always gives you type float. If at least one of them is type float, the result again is going to be type float. So just keep that in mind. And then let's try something else. So let's do 7 divided by 3. So now you see we have this number for division, right? Sometimes you don't want to see that many floating type, that many decimal points, and is there any way to cut that for us? So we want to maybe see only two floating point values instead of the ones that we have here, or 1 or 5, okay? We can choose that. And here's where format function comes handy. So you can format the number the way that you want to see it. So let's go ahead and try to format something for us. First, I'm going to do it in the shell, and then we are going to kind of transfer that into our code. So whenever you're trying something new, first try it in the shell, just play around with it, and then you can take it into your code and play with it some more in there. Okay, so let's see how we can use format function. So I'm going to use format here. Again, it is a predefined function. As soon as you put it, it's going to turn purple. I'm going to always put the parentheses so I don't forget that I need to have the parentheses for the function that I have. Sometimes you don't put the parentheses and Python gets really mad and it gives you error messages. You just go back and fix it. That's okay. All right, so I have the format function. The way that I use format function for the beginning lectures is I always use it in a way that you pass two values to it, right? Always passing two values to it. So format function, and you have your first value here, which is your actual value that you want to format. And then the second one is your format specifier. All right, so you have your value. Let's say in this example, I want to format this. So I'm going to replace it with my value. So the first argument you put there is your value. This is the value I want to format. And then the second part is your format specifier. And your format specifier is always going to be a type of string. So you're always going to put those quotations in. So now how to format it? So in this case, I want to see, let's say, 2 decimal points. So I put this period, which tells it, okay, this is going to be a float type value, okay? This is a float type value. I'm telling you how many numbers, how many values I want to see after this period that I have here. So I want to see only 2 decimal places. I want to see 2 values after that period. Since it is a float type, we put that F as well, right? So the format specifier tells it after the period, only have 2 digits, and it is type float. So let's go ahead and run this. Whoa, what happened? Point to F, and here we go. So now you see you have a numeric value or a value that shows up, which is 2.33. So it cut the rest of it, and it's showing you a value that only has 2 decimal points. The thing with format function is, because it is showing you a value the way that you want, it always creates a string type. It always creates a string type. And that is what you see here. You see the quotations. We passed a number to it, and we asked it to show it in a specific way to us. It does that, but it creates a string type, right? It creates a string type. And it's okay, because we usually use format to display stuff. And it changes it the way that you want to be printed. So that's okay. We usually don't use format function for arithmetic operations and things like that. So it creates it, shows it the way that you want for the displaying purposes. So I have the decimal points. If you change this number, so let's try it again. If you change this number to something else, let's do 5 instead of 2, it's going to keep 5 digits after the period. But it's, again, always creating a string type for you. Like, there's no exceptions, always a string type when it comes to format function. All right, so now let's take this one and go back here. So if I want to format my num2, and let's say, okay, I want to pass a variable to it. I want to have num that is formatted. So I'm going to say, okay, format this variable num for me. I want to only see 2 decimal points with that number, and then print num, right? So let's go ahead and run this code. I'm still seeing all of those decimal points. I'm going to see all of the digits, but I thought I formatted it. Okay, what happened? So the thing happened here is, okay, you do the calculation, you have the num, this variable num, and you're saying, okay, format this num. It does format it for you, but you never ask it to be printed. The variable num, you never changed it. It is still the value with all of those decimal places. So if I don't print it, it's going to be the exact same thing. When you go back to the next line, in line 20, num is still the number with all of those decimal places. So if you want to see the formatted version of it, you need to make sure you print it. So make sure you put it inside the print function. So now if I do it, you're going to see num twice. One is formatted one, the second one is not the formatted one. So here we go. So this is coming from the line that you have format function in it. This line comes from the one that you don't have the format function. The other thing that you can do is, okay, so I have this line. Let's say I don't want to format it. I just want to format it. You can always assign it to that variable. So now you're changing this variable num to something else, and it holds the value of the new formatted version of that num, which is type a string. And then if you want, the next line you print it. So now if you run this one, it's going to show you the formatted version of that variable because you reassigned num into something new. So you're saying, okay, take this num, which was coming from this, with all of those decimal places, format it, keep only 2 decimal points, and then assign it to this variable num. So you're reassigning the value of your bucket to something new, which is type a string, which is a formatted version of it, and you're printing it. So there's a huge difference between this assignment versus not doing the assignment. Because if you don't do the assignment, you never change the value of num. You're just saying, okay, format it, but you never changed it. Okay, you never changed the value of your bucket. So it's going to keep its original value. It's going to be non-formatted, and you're going to see the original value versus assigning it, like formatting it and then assigning it to this variable, then it is changed. It is a new formatted version of num and you're printing it. So either way is fine. If you want to reassign it or if you want to take this one and put it here and just go ahead and calculate it, keep the num as a number, and then just when you're showing it or displaying it, you formatting it, right? So either one is fine. It's up to you how you want to use it. So there's some other stuff that goes into format function I'm going to talk about in the next video.